Seoul at night glittered like something out of a dream, 10 million lights spilling all the way down to the dark line of the river. Somewhere inside it, in the most beautiful room she had ever stood in, Asha Sesai was learning that a dream and a trap can wear the exact same face. The laughter had not even finished leaving their mouths when the room began to change. Asha Sesai stood alone in the middle of that beautiful room, and every part of her wanted to sink through the floor and vanish. The gown she had chosen so carefully felt like a spotlight now. 40 strangers had just watched her own family lift her up like a punchline, and the sound of it was still ringing in her ears, bright and sharp and merciless. Then, across the room, a chair moved. It was a small sound, only the soft scrape of wood against polished stone, but somehow it cut clean through the noise. Heads began to turn. The man who had been sitting alone at the far table was on his feet. He did not hurry. He moved through the lavish lounge the way water moves downhill, certain and impossible to stop, and every conversation he passed fell silent behind him. Asha did not know who he was. She only knew that the entire room seemed to, and that the knowing had made them afraid. He stopped in front of her. Up close, he was even more than he had seemed from across the room, tall and composed, his dark eyes fixed on her face as though everyone else had simply ceased to exist. Her heart was slamming so hard she was sure he could hear it. She braced for one more cruelty, because cruelty was the only thing a moment like this had ever delivered to her. Instead, he looked at her the way no one in her entire life had ever looked at her. Like she was the most precious thing in the building. Like the rest of them should be ashamed they had ever been allowed in the same room as her. And then, before she could begin to understand any of it, the night folded backward. To know how a woman like Asha ended up here, standing in front of a man the whole of Seoul feared, you have to go back 12 hours, to the moment the lie that brought her here first wore the face of love. 12 hours earlier, Asha walked into Seoul carrying nothing heavier than hope. The call had come 3 weeks before. Yemi and Tola, the same two cousins who had spent their whole lives looking straight through her, suddenly phoning with honey in their voices. A surprise trip, their treat. A chance, Yemi had said so sweetly, to finally do something as a family. Asha had cried after she hung up. She had ached to belong to them for so long that she never once stopped to ask why now. She came through the gates with her heart wide open, searching the crowd for the two faces she had flown across the world to be near. They wrapped her in an embrace that felt like everything she had ever wanted. Yemi held her tight and said how good it was to finally have her here. And for one shining moment, Asha let herself believe she had a family. The hotel was the kind of place Asha had only ever seen in films. Floors that gleamed, a skyline through the glass that did not look real. She kept thanking them, and Yemi kept waving it away, telling her tonight was going to be a night she would never forget. She had no idea how true that was. It was small, the thing she noticed. A look that passed between her cousins when they thought she was not watching. Tola's smile slipping for half a second, a whisper that stopped the moment she turned. Something in her stomach tightened, the old instinct that had kept her safe her whole life, and she told it to be quiet. Just this once she wanted to believe. Across the suite, Yemi watched her cousin unpack with a smile that had teeth in it. She had planned every minute of the coming night. The dress, the table, the audience. She had even told Tola what to film and exactly when. To Yemi, none of this was cruelty. It was a lesson. Asha had spent too long thinking she could be more than what Yemi had decided she was, and tonight the world would put her back in her place. Asha stood at the glass and looked out at all those lights, and she pushed the worry down the way she always did. Maybe people changed. Maybe this was the year her family finally saw her. Listen, if your chest is doing something complicated right now, watching her hope like this, do me one small favor. Before it goes any further, tap subscribe. When you do, you are telling AfroKorean Love Tales Hub that a story like this one reached you, and honestly, that is the whole reason this channel gets to keep building worlds this deep. It costs you nothing, and it means everything on this end. Now stay close to her, because the dress Yemi chose is already waiting. The gown was beautiful. Deep burgundy, the kind of thing Asha would never have bought for herself. Yemi pressed it into her hands and told her she would look like a queen. Asha did not see the trap folded into the silk. She only saw that, for once, someone wanted her to shine. When she put it on and turned to the mirror, she barely knew the woman looking back. She looked soft and radiant and alive. She let herself laugh just once at how good it felt. Behind her, Tola lifted her phone, and Asha thought she was capturing a memory. But Tola was not capturing a memory. She was following Yemi's instructions, and somewhere behind her own eyes, a small voice was asking her to stop. She did not listen to it. She never did. That was the thing about Tola. She always knew the difference between right and wrong, and she always chose her sister. They left the suite together, 3 women in beautiful dresses, 2 of them sharing a secret, and one of them walking happily toward the worst night of her life. The car pulled up outside a building that breathed money, gold light, dark stone, the kind of doorway people are turned away from. Asha stepped onto that red carpet and felt, for the first time in her life, like she might actually deserve to walk through a door like this. Inside, the room glittered, crystal and candlelight and quiet, wealthy laughter. Yemi led them to a table near the center of it all, right where everyone could see, and Asha did not understand yet why her cousin had asked for that exact spot. For a while it was perfect. They ordered things Asha could not pronounce and laughed at her trying. She felt warm, included, almost giddy. She did not notice Tola quietly angling the phone toward her. She did not notice the other tables Yemi kept glancing at. She was too busy being happy. Then Yemi stood. She lifted her voice so it carried, sweet and bright and loud enough for the tables around them to hear, and she said she wanted to make a toast to her dear cousin, who had come all this way, who had eaten so well tonight. The room began to turn toward them. Asha's smile wavered. She did not understand yet, but her body did. That old instinct she had silenced at the hotel came roaring back, screaming at her to run. She gripped the edge of the table. She told herself she was wrong. Yemi would never. And then Yemi said it, loud, clear, smiling, that they had brought her all the way to Seoul to find her a husband, but no man on this side of the world would ever want to carry a body that size. She laughed as she said it. She turned to the room as if inviting them to laugh too. And they did. Not all of them, but enough. A ripple of laughter moved through that beautiful room, and every sound of it landed on Asha like a stone. Her ears were ringing, the candlelight blurred. She felt her whole life shrink down to this one unbearable moment, surrounded, exposed, laughed at by strangers and by blood. If you are still here with me, still holding your breath beside her, type the words "still watching" so I know you stayed, and tell me your city and the exact time on your screen right now. I read them, then settle back in fast, because what Asha does next, no one in that room is ready for. Even Tola stopped filming. Whatever she had told herself this trip was about, she had not been ready to feel it in her own chest like this. She looked at her cousin's face breaking apart and finally understood what she had helped build. Asha rose. Her legs barely held her. She would not cry in front of them, she decided, even as the tears came anyway. She gathered what was left of herself and turned to walk out of that room and out of their lives forever. For one endless second she stood there alone, the whole glittering room staring, the laughter still hanging in the air. This was the moment Yemi had wanted, her cousin small again, put back in her place. But there was one person in that room who was not laughing. At the far table, a man no one there would have dared to laugh in front of had set down his glass. He had watched the whole thing, and something behind his cold, dark eyes had gone very, very still. His chair scraped back across the polished stone. The sound was small, but it cut through everything. One by one, the laughing faces began to turn, and as they recognized him, the laughter died in their throats. People in that room knew exactly who he was. People in that room were afraid of him. He walked toward her without hurry, and the whole room seemed to part around him. Yemi's triumphant smile froze. She did not know this man. She only knew, suddenly, that the air in the room had changed, and that whatever was about to happen was no longer hers to control. Asha did not see him coming. She was staring at the floor, gathering herself to leave, when the room went strangely quiet around her. The laughter had stopped. She looked up, confused, expecting another cruelty. Instead, he was there, standing in front of her, tall and composed and close, his eyes on her face as if no one else in the world existed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She braced for the worst, because the worst was all she had ever known. But the cruelty did not come. He looked at her the way no one in her entire life had ever looked at her, not with pity, with something close to wonder, like she was the only thing in that whole glittering room worth seeing. Then he turned his head just slightly and spoke to the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. He said that the most beautiful woman in the building had just been insulted by people who would never be worth a single one of her tears, and that anyone who had laughed should think very carefully about whose city they were laughing in. The silence that followed was total. Not a fork moved. The same people who had laughed now found somewhere else to look. In a single sentence, this man had turned the entire room against the very family who had brought her here to break her. Asha could not breathe. The room that had been laughing at her a moment ago was now silent and ashamed, and the most powerful man in it was standing at her side as though he belonged there. Her mind could not catch up with what her eyes were seeing. He held out his hand to her, just like that, as if she was someone worth offering a hand to. Asha stared at it. Her whole body wanted to believe, and her whole life had taught her not to, because this had to be a joke. It had to be. Men like this did not choose women like her, not in real life, not in front of a room. Somewhere this was a setup, a new way to humiliate her, a punchline she could not see yet. Her hand drew back. Yemi saw an opportunity and lunged for it. She stepped forward, all charm now, introducing herself as Asha's cousin, gushing about how wonderful it was that a man of his standing would notice their family. She thought she could fold this powerful stranger into her own performance. He did not even look at her. He let Yemi talk herself into silence, his eyes never once leaving Asha, until Yemi's words ran out and she stood there flushed and small in a way she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, Yemi did not matter to the most important person in the room, and Asha saw it. She saw him refuse the very person who had spent a lifetime making her feel like nothing. Something in her chest cracked open. Maybe, just maybe, this was not a trick. He leaned in, just enough that only she could hear, and asked her if she would let him take her somewhere quieter, away from all of these small people. His voice was soft, It asked. It did not command. And for the first time that night, Asha felt like she had a choice, but the choice frightened her. She took a step back. She told him no. She did not know him. She did not know what he wanted. And everything beautiful in her life had always come with a price she could not afford. She would not be anyone's entertainment again, not even his. He did not push. He did not frown. He simply lowered his hand and nodded, as if her no was the most reasonable thing in the world. He told her she was right not to trust a stranger, and that he would not move an inch she did not want him to. So she walked away from him. She made herself do it, one step at a time, past all the staring faces, toward the door and the cold night beyond. But at the threshold she glanced back, just once, and he was still standing exactly where she had left him, watching her go with that same unbearable steadiness. The night air hit her like cold water. She stood on the curb, shaking, the shame and the shock and that strange warmth all tangled together in her chest. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not be in that room for one more second. He came out after her, but he stopped several steps away and went no closer. He told her he was not there to take anything from her. He told her he had simply spent his whole life watching people pretend to be more than they were, and that tonight he had finally seen the opposite, a woman worth more than she had been allowed to believe. Something in those words got past every wall she had ever built. No one had ever fought for her before, not once. Not her family, not a friend, not a single soul in 29 years. And here was a stranger who had stood up in a room full of powerful people and dared all of them to insult her again. So she said yes, not to anything more than a conversation, just somewhere quiet, somewhere she could breathe, somewhere away from the room that had broken her. He offered her a place upstairs, a private terrace above the city. And against every instinct she had ever trusted, she followed him. He led her to a quiet alcove off the main floor, half hidden behind a sheer curtain, where the noise of the room fell away. Just a small table, 2 seats, a single candle. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was warm, not heavy. He told her his name was Yoon Jae. He did not tell her everything about himself, not yet, but he told her enough. That he had grown up cold and feared and alone, surrounded by people who wanted things from him, and that he had learned to spot the rare ones who wanted nothing at all. She was one of those, he said. He had known it from across the room. And slowly, Asha began to talk. About a lifetime of being the joke, about a mother who sighed at her plate, and cousins who made her the punchline of every gathering. About how she had stopped expecting anyone to choose her, because choosing herself had been hard enough. She had never said any of it out loud. It poured out of her now like something that had been waiting years for a safe place to land. He listened. He did not interrupt, did not fix, did not flinch. The most feared man in the city sat perfectly still and let a woman the world had laughed at pour her whole wounded heart onto the table between them. And when she finished, he told her something so quietly she almost missed it. That the people who had laughed tonight would remember this night for the rest of their lives, and not in the way they expected. Then, somehow, he made her laugh. A real one, surprised out of her, the kind that loosens something in the chest. And when she caught herself laughing, here, tonight, of all nights, she pressed a hand to her mouth as if she had done something forbidden. He told her she should never cover that sound up, not for anyone. And that was the moment it happened. The wall she had spent a lifetime building, brick by careful brick, simply came down. She looked at him and forgot to be afraid. The candlelight, his voice, the impossible kindness of being seen, all of it folded around her until the rest of the world went quiet. He stood and offered softly to show her the view from the terrace above. The whole city, he said, looked different from up there. Asha rose without hesitation this time. She wanted to see it. She wanted, she realized, to stay near him a little longer. The terrace stole her breath. All of Seoul spread out below them, a galaxy of light running down to the river, the night air cool and soft. For a moment, Asha just stood at the rail and looked, and she felt, impossibly, like the city belonged to her. He came and stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool air. They talked, low and easy, about nothing and everything. The hours folded away. She could not remember the last time she had felt this safe, this wanted, this much like herself. At one point he reached out and eased a loose braid back from her cheek, his touch so careful it made her chest ache. She did not pull away. She leaned, just slightly, into the warmth of his hand. 12 hours ago she had been a joke at her own family's table. Now she stood above a sleeping city while a man like this looked at her like she hung the lights. When the night grew late, he offered to take her somewhere she could rest, somewhere far from her cousins, and that ruined dinner. His car was waiting below, dark and silent, the kind of car that moved through the city like a secret. She slid into the leather seat beside him and let the lights of Seoul blur past the glass. In the dark of the car, his hand found hers on the seat, and she let it stay. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. Asha closed her eyes and let herself feel for once completely held. She had no idea where they were going. For the first time in her life, she did not need to. The car rose to the top of a tower of glass, and he brought her into a home that did not look like a home. Vast, dark, beautiful, and somehow cold, with windows that held the whole skyline and not a single photograph anywhere. It was the home of a powerful man. It was also, she would soon understand, the home of a dangerous one. But in that moment, she did not see the danger. She saw only him, standing close in the amber light, with the whole city behind him, looking at her as though she was something he had waited his entire life to find. She let herself believe it. She let herself be happy. And that was exactly when everything changed. Then a phone buzzed. Once, sharp in the quiet. The warmth in the room seemed to drop a few degrees all at once. Yoon-jae glanced at the screen and Asha watched something move across his face that she had not seen all night. Something hard. Something cold. A door opened. A man she had not seen before stepped into the penthouse, broad and silent, a faint scar through one eyebrow and an earpiece curling at his collar. He crossed straight to Yoon-jae and spoke into his ear, fast and low, and whatever he said pulled every last trace of warmth from the room, and Asha saw it. The man who had cupped her face on a rooftop an hour ago was gone. In his place stood someone she did not know at all, his eyes flat and lethal, his whole body coiled with something that made her blood run cold. The hands that had held her so gently belonged to a man the entire city was afraid of, and now she understood why. The danger she had felt safe from all night had never been outside this room. It had been beside her the whole time. She took a step back. Her heart was hammering at 160 beats a minute, the city lights swimming behind him. She wanted to run. There was nowhere to run to. She was 40 floors up in the home of a man she had known for a single night, and she had just watched him turn into someone else entirely. Yoon-jae turned to her slowly. The coldness in his eyes did not fade. He said her name, just her name, in a voice she had never heard him use, and in that single word was something that told her the truth of who he was, the reason the whole room had feared him, the thing she had walked straight into the heart of. And then he opened his mouth to tell her exactly what she had become a part of. If your mind is already racing toward what he says next, do not keep it to yourself. Put part 2 in the comments and put it there now, because that is the only signal that pulls the next chapter forward. Enough of you call for it tonight, and it lands. Say the word, and it is yours,